Well, I think people should interpret this as a positive, but not overly positive. I mean, we had the oil price drop, we had an exchange devaluation massively. So you're going to expect then, because we're an importing economy, that inflation is going to run through the system. But of course, now that oil price is back up and the exchange rate is stabilized, what happened before has in effect run its course. So you would expect inflation to come down, and obviously 11% is better than 17%. But we still have a lot of problems with our price level here. Okay.
Let's just talk us through some of these problems. And you think, that can be dealt with in the short term. We understand the problem does exist. It's going to take it's going to take a while for some of them to go away. But just give us a highlight on some of these key issues that you think can be tackled short term.
Well, I think let's stand back for a minute. And what is inflation about? So you have money, and the value of it's depreciating over time. And of course, I mean, in this country, the Naira used to be worth more than the dollar. Not too distant past on that. So someone that's held Naira has basically had all of their wealth crushed. And you can see if you're a pensioner, or you're living on a fixed income, or your salary doesn't keep pace, inflation is incredibly pernicious. So the winners in inflation also tend to be the people that are more sophisticated. So if you own hard assets like real estate, or you're in the financial business, you know how to work with higher inflation, but it ends up hurting the bottom of the pyramid. So that's what's been happening. We need inflation to come down a lot further. Now, what is inflation? Inflation, the classic definition in economics is it's too much money chasing too few goods. The problem in this country is the too few goods. Because of all of our structural impediments to production, the cost of producing rice is too high, the cost of producing beef is too high, the cost of housing is too high. What's really going to help the price level and inflation in this country is actually the structural debottlenecking. So sometimes people think the CBN can do something that can eliminate inflation. The CBN is doing the best it can. But the best analogy is the CBN governor is driving a car, but the rest of us create the car. Is he driving a Kia? Is he driving a Ferrari? Is he driving a Model T? And we're really only going to get our handle on this problem when we make the structural changes that bring price levels down.
Interesting. That's a very key point you just raised there. Now, talking about that, let's talk about how you see this going forward. How do you think it's actually going to influence the decisions at the next MPC meeting to begin with? We understand at the moment CBN, of course, is still holding its rate at 14%, as inflation is still above, of course, the single-digit target to begin with. Do you see them actually changing course at the next meeting, or is it going to be the same? I mean, there are those who actually say for us to get to single-digit might happen sometime mid-next year. They don't see that happening anytime soon.
Well, I don't know what the CBN governor's latest view is. I know when I heard him speak in the fall, he thought we would get to single digit this year. People thought we'd go a little faster this month.
But do you really see that happen?
We're on the trajectory. I think it could happen in the fall. I think the MPC, of course, the last time the MPC met, I think, was the first meeting of a number of the new members of the committee. And there wasn't enough news on this for them to really, I think, make a decision their first meeting. I think the next meeting, there's a possibility that we see a reduction. I mean, you've seen what, 400 or 500 basis points reduction in the government cost of borrowing, flattening of the yield curve there. So I think we've got some room to bring it down a little bit.
Well, at the moment, talking about the near future, the banks who actually feel that inflation could worsen, especially as a result of what they foresee some kind of influx, of cash from spending from this related to the delayed 2018 budget. How do you see this playing? We're in the month of June at the moment. How do you see this playing between now and November?
Right. So, but it goes back to this classic definition. If the government has been withholding budgetary spending for whatever reason, now we come to the election cycle. Of course, we understand politics here. They might be tempted to really, put money into the economy. But if there aren't any more goods in the economy because of these structural constraints of producing goods, all that happens is that prices go up, right? Because inflation is a monetary phenomenon. If there's more money and the same amount of goods, prices go up. So they could reintroduce inflation by pumping in too much without having enough production to accommodate it.
But then you just mentioned earlier, we all know that Nigeria is an import-dependent economy. Do you not see those windows opening once again? Oil prices are picking up. Tastes are getting more sophisticated again. There is money. Don't you actually see us having, recording an increase in imported products coming to the country? I understand industrialization is low on this side, but then, hey, we must...
Yeah, I mean, if we're spending more now, oil prices up, we are going to import more.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a given. We can't do, I mean, the import substitution, the industrialization of Nigeria is not far enough along to stop our imports from going up if we have the money, particularly with oil prices high. But then it highlights, again, just how vulnerable we are if oil prices come down. Now, why are oil prices high? I mean, in a way, President Trump has done us a great favor by bringing instability, by sort of squeezing down on Venezuela, on canceling the agreement about Iran. He's created a lot of instability in the oil market, and the reaction, of course, oil price goes up. So we're benefiting from that. But we need to make sure that we don't take any pressure off the diversification, because these effects are going to be temporary.
But how well are we really doing when it comes to diversification in the first place? I mean, it almost seems as if that discussion is taking a back seat ever since we saw oil prices pick up again.
Well, I mean, I think we've been vocal on this. We're not going fast enough. I mean, the economy is not doing well enough. There's still too many structural constraints. The power issue in particular is one, I think, that really pains us all. I mean, I think many of us were optimistic in the privatization, which is now, what, 5 years ago almost, and we haven't made enough progress. The DISCOs and some of the GENCOs are effectively insolvent. You know, they're having to ask for the intervention program. We haven't solved the metering problem. We haven't solved the grid problem overall. So in a way, we are squandering our time for this diversification, because if we don't solve the power problem, we're not going to diversify.